we'll get started then. You guys, a little background of why we're here. We're all from the University of Mount Union. We are in a class, it's called, it's a capstone, and the name of the class is Negotiating Diversity. Basically this class is designed for us to gain skills. We're all seniors, and basically it is us to kind of get out and develop skills that we could use out in the real world and things that aren't really focused like on our majors. And for this class we had to come and present to a church group. And basically we had to explain some of the things we learned throughout the year, some of the things that, that we researched, and basically what the main purpose of this is kind of to tell you guys about race, about diversity, about whiteness. So my name is Josh Bender. I am, as I said, a senior here. I am from Delaware, Ohio, which if you guys don't know, it's a little bit north of Columbus. I am a member of the lacrosse team here. I've played lacrosse for 4 years, and that's about it.
You want me to go? Alright, I'm Mike Richardson. I'm from Parma. It's about 10 minutes south of Cleveland. I also play lacrosse with Bender over here. I've been also playing for 4 years, so I'm a marketing major as well.
Hi, I'm Essie McBride. I'm a senior as well, obviously. I'm an accounting major. I play soccer, and I'm from Zanesville. I don't know if you guys heard about the wild animal thing that happened a couple years ago. All the animals getting loose and stuff. That's my hometown, so...
That's actually where I'm from.
You're from Zanesville? Wow, okay, what part? Where do you live, I guess I should say?
I lived on Norwood near Westview Elementary, and then on Forest near the old Good Sam.
Oh, okay, yeah, I live off Dresden.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's close. It's a small world.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of going to start off and we're going to play a little game just to get everyone moving. So we're going to split you up and have can we just have like the girls over here and the boys over there, please?
We kind of want to be the
Yeah.
Alright, Josh, you got it? Actually,
Go in front.
we lied to you guys. We're liars. We're gonna have you guys switch.
Sorry.
Guys over there, girls over there. Guys
Told you,
sit,
Josh.
the guys sit on the
Yeah, the
ground.
guys have to sit on the ground, and then the girls
guys
sit in
sit
the
in the
chairs.
chairs.
Okay. Okay. I don't know who's from this.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you, go back and forth from each team and ask you guys a couple questions, okay? I'm not texting that phone. Alright, we'll start with the girls. Okay, what's the color of the sky? You can give them a piece of
Clear.
I like this game already.
Okay, Emma,
Rolls.
do you guys
I'm okay, I don't need any candy.
What is the largest lake in Central
No
America?
candy?
Really?
I like
Take candy. I'm an adult, I feel like I shouldn't. I do too. Good job.
There's that. You take this. You're gonna have to buy your candy.
Wait, where?
Central America.
Lake Arnold.
Petite one.
No.
Petite one?
No. Okay,
Oh
girls.
no, it's getting hard again, I'm getting nervous.
What is 2 times 2?
4.
Yeah.
I felt like
You get more candy.
You get more
Okay,
candy.
boys.
Great.
How many bones are in the human body?
Boy or girl?
No, I didn't break it down, so just give me a number.
Does it make a difference? I hope that you would be able to answer that phone now. So I was gonna answer that.
Sounds right.
It's not 217.
No.
Eddie, what'd you say?
217? No, I'm sorry. Okay, good girls. What's the name of the current president?
President
And then the last question is
I like
guys,
this game. This is a great game. Oh my god.
What is who was the 22nd president?
This is crazy because I think it's so weird that they can't answer it.
Right? So, here's the...
I think the point is that we're
What the...
Obviously, George Washington. Obviously.
President McKinley. No.
No.
We're just taking a shot at
Cleveland.
art. It was
Grover,
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Good job. Thanks. I would have gotten it.
Okay, so does anyone know what we just did there?
I noticed we got easier questions.
Pretty sure
We
After the second question.
So we kind of wanted to show you like something that happens in everyday life with race. There's discrimination. You know, the girls got to sit on the nice, comfortable chairs, whereas the boys, you kind of got treated a little unequally, and you're on the floor. They got easier questions. They got candy. You'll get candy at the end. And so it just like goes to show that discrimination and race, it's in everyday life. You know, people get treated differently and unfair because of their skin color, their gender. It's not just skin color; it goes a lot farther. You know, culture, like I said, gender, really anything goes into discrimination and race. Okay, you can go back to your seats if you want.
Yeah, you guys can all sit in chairs now.
No, they mustn't.
Better for that.
Josh is still in the building. Josh is being diverse.
Okay, so first I'm going to kind of give you guys a little background on race, a little bit of history, kind of how it moved, and kind of how like the whiteness of the United States kind of took over. First I want to talk about like the naturalistic science. This was kind of back in the 19th century. This is basically focused on, you know, the nature of ourselves, the biology of ourselves, kind of like our physical features and stuff like that. It's just like natural. And it kind of, there was like these new studies people were conducting, and they were measuring different physical features, such as, you know, hair color, skin color, average height, the size of your head, hair texture, the size of your nose, like if it was long, if it was short. And this is basically how they were, you know, grouping people together, is on their physical features, and nothing like anything like race or anything like that. It was all based on physical features. And then this kind of, as I said before, just reflected a kind of a naturalistic tradition of basically, you know, man versus woman, and, you know, the features that a woman has and the features that a man has. And so when did whiteness begin to take over? Next slide. It kind of started when our nation became the United States. When, you know, the settlers were coming over, and, you know, it was the New World. And it basically started when we kicked all the Native Americans out of the lands and told them, basically, you guys have to go somewhere else. This is kind of our land now. And that's kind of when, you know, the whiteness kind of took over, and, you know, basically white rules. And then, you know, as the nation, you know, started building up and we finally became a nation, it was built on slavery. And I'm going to talk about kind of how racial classification changed to racialization. And the very first thing that kind of started with was, you know, the word slave or slavery. I asked one of you guys, what is the very first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the word slavery? Any of you?
First thing that pops in your head.
First thing.
You don't have to raise your hand.
Bondage. Just like sad.
Abuse. Racism.
Yep, those are, I mean, yeah, studies. I was thinking about this, and those are like some of the first things that come to my mind. Working out in the fields, very long work days. Basically, you weren't even considered a human. And at this point in history, and even today, many people associate, when they think of the word slave, they think of someone that has a black skin color. And, you know, those are the only people that were slaves, you know, were people of black skin color. And this is, if you look back in history, this is actually not really true. That the word slave actually comes from a European meaning, and it basically started with white people trading white people. It wasn't, you know, white people trading black people. It was white people trading white people. And so when did this start to change from, you know, classification to racialization? It started with the kind of the European view on things, and kind of how like people in the New World looked at things. So the United States and how they looked at things. Europeans held a belief that the best in life was the expansion of one's self. And the expansion of one's self was through property, and property began and ended with the possession of one's body. So basically, with the expansion of yourself was because it started with your body, and then as in history you started gaining land and belonging and stuff like that, and that's how you increased yourself. But it all started with your own body, possessing and owning your own body. And as soon as people started coming to the New World, United States started to become what it is. They kind of had a new spin on things, and they proclaimed that the ownership of they basically proclaimed the ownership of these slaves' bodies. And basically, these slaves were they were just there, and they didn't own themselves. They were owned by someone else. And this kind of detached the slave's body from self, because basically they had themselves, but they didn't have their body, because their slave owner, they were owned by someone else, but they still had their self. And basically, slave owners, they kind of degraded the self of slaves so low that it was kind of like subhuman. And that was just another reason why it changed from racial classification to racialization. Next, I kind of want to start, I touched on it a little bit, of slavery in the South. I was really surprised when I was looking into this. There actually, most whites in the South didn't own slaves. There was a very core group of very rich and wealthy men, white men, that owned slaves. These were like the big, huge plantation owners that owned hundreds of slaves. But normally the most, normal, everyday white male in the South didn't own slaves. And slave owner wives, there were some quotes from some slave owner, like plantation owner wives. And they basically said that the owning of slaves corrupted their husbands, because they were so focused on owning these people and gaining power in their property and in their plantation and just growing, that they didn't focus like on the little things. And also slave owners would almost all the time take advantage, or not all the time, but most of the time would take advantage of the slaves. And as you guys know, you guys said they would chain them, they would whip them, they would put them out in the field with little water, little food, and this kind of discouraged many of the wives during that time. And there were free black people during this time in the South, and they would actually, some of them were treated, as you know, there's slaves down there, so the free ones were treated basically pretty bad too. Next one. So basically, the movement to kind of end slavery. Abraham Lincoln was kind of the president during this time, during the Civil War, that kind of helped end slavery. He believed that black people should be paid, and slaves should be paid for a fair day's wage. So basically, is what he's saying. They're putting in all this work in the fields. They should be paid in equal wages. But he believed that. But he still believed that the white race was still superior to everyone else. So he's still kind of, I feel like, on the border, in my opinion. And then Frederick Douglass, here on the right, he was a huge abolitionist. He basically fought to end slavery. And an interesting thing I saw, that he would actually have these big gatherings and he would talk in front of people, kind of like Martin Luther King did in a way. And white people would actually go up to him after he was done talking, and they would kind of like start touching his face and like rubbing his skin and stuff like that, because they didn't believe that he could be a black man and talk so intelligently and so moving like that. And they thought he had colored his face and put like coal and stuff like that on his face to make him look black, but this was not the case. Next. So next I want to talk about kind of the economy and when whiteness really started to take hold in the United States, it was after World War II, because during World War II there was many jobs that were available from building things for the war, things like that. There was professional, technical, and manual labor jobs that were created during the war, and then they continued after the war. And this kind of created opportunities for many people in the United States that didn't have those opportunities before the war. And it kind of increased the middle class in the United States. And this is one of the times where the United States this was basically the best our economy has been in history, was after the war, because there was just so many jobs available. And as you guys know, an education, to go to college, I'm going to be having to pay off my loans here soon, so trust me, it is very expensive. And basically, you need to have money to get educated, to go to college. And so during this time, white people, they were getting up in the economy, they were, moving into that middle class, and so they had the money to go and get educated and go to college and things like that, and then get even more better jobs, more paying jobs. So this was kind of when the whiteness started to really take place. So kind of today, why is skin color so important? When you think about it, there's everyday things. There's people competing for jobs every day. There's people competing for promotions every day. There's people trying to get loans. There's people buying houses every day. There's this thing we learned about that I actually really didn't know about before this class, and it's called redlining. It's basically, when an African American and a white person are going to buy a house, they're going for the same house, and the white person might get a house, let's say, for $150,000, and the African American goes in and he said, "Sorry, sir, I'm gonna have to offer you $200,000 for this house." And so basically that is just how skin color has played a role in I guess just a short in the housing of the United States. I mean, that's not always the case, but it does happen, and it's happening all around us. So the some economics from currently in the United States, there are 33 million people that are poor, and there's 20 to 30 million people that are considered needy. Can you guys think of the people that are not poor? What's the race that isn't part of those millions of people?
It's like stereotypical white.
Yep. It's it's the white people. Those are the white people are not in those 30. I mean, yeah, there are, but the white people are not in those 33 million to 20, and then the million of people. It's filled with African Americans, Hispanic, Asian. That's like the group that fills those millions of people. So, question for you guys: who is the largest single group among the poor? I'll give you guys a hint. You guys might know some of these people, or be friends with some of these people.
Hispanic?
Anyone else? Anyone else? It is actually the youth. The youth in the United States is some of the poorest group of people. So it's it's you guys. It's the people around you. It could be your friends at school. I mean, you might have no idea, but I mean that is the poorest group of people in the United States right now. So I kind of gave you guys a brief kind of history of where kind of race has evolved and how it kind of started in the United States and kind of how it's progressed through our history and kind of to where it is now. Now Essie is going to talk about kind of whiteness and what it is and some real life examples of what whiteness does.
Alright, so has anyone ever heard the term white privilege? Yes. Do you guys know what it is? Can you give me a definition of your own words?
Basically that we're just not like discriminated against.
You're the top of the group. Keep answering my questions. Yeah, it's just using, like, we have an advantage over people, us three can be driving down the street late at night and a cop might drive by us and not even second guess anything. Whereas if it's 3 African Americans, 3 Hispanics, whatever, they might pull us over for silly things like, oh, we don't have a license plate light, who knows. So does anyone have an example of white privilege that they've seen being used, or like have you guys used yours to help anyone or anything by chance? It's probably hard, I know. I can recall.
Like Essie used her white privilege today by getting in the front line at Starbucks. She just hopped right to the front because...
No, I didn't. I'm addicted. No. So an example today that, well, not today, because it's Sunday, that we learned in class. A white lady and her African American friend were at the grocery store, and the white lady went first, and she checked out. She had a big shopping cart, and the lady just let her through. She paid with her check, and it was over. She's done. And then she's like waiting around, and it's getting to be too long, and her African American friend's still like in the line, and she goes and she starts eavesdropping, and she basically overhears that the African American lady needed 2 forms of ID to write a check at the grocery store. The same cashier, asked for 2 forms of ID because of her skin color. So she was like, why are you doing this to my friend? Like, that's disrespectful, you can't do this. And she kind of used her white privilege to help her friend out, because as soon as that lady came up to the cashier and questioned her about it, she kind of dropped everything and she was fine. She accepted the check and just moved on with her day. So, I don't know if you can read that fact, but it says a white male with a criminal record is 5% more likely to get a job of a man with color with a clean record. Sorry. And that's, once again, just based on skin color. And that's actually a recent fact I found online. Obviously, I didn't draw that. But, it's just like it's sad to say, but we do have privileges over other people and other cultures. And it's just, we have to accept the fact that we have white privilege, and we need to put it to good use and, help the community. We need to spread the word, like, this is a youth group. You guys are our youth. Not my youth, I hope you're the same age as me. But, and if we start now, we're going to be able to teach everyone about it, so when everyone's retiring and we're in the workforce, we won't have to judge people based on skin color or anything like that, and we can just make it a whole better place.
So I'm going to kind of talk about something that's kind of uncomfortable to talk about. I read a book in class, and they call this like a racial line kind of crossing over. They call it the zap line. So a dog, if you put a shock collar on a dog, first time a dog puts it on, it's going to run up, it's going to go to the fence, it's going to get shocked, and it's going to run back. So in the book, they kind of use the shock collar as an example of a white person maybe crossing a line and someone saying something to them. They kind of get scared. So what they do, they kind of go back into their comfort zone, which is other white people, and they're afraid to go up to that line. They don't want to go to that line anymore because they kind of got zapped a little bit, and they don't want to get hurt, and they don't want to get confronted like that. So growing up and as white people, we kind of have been taught to not see race. But people of color, like if you ask them, they've been conditioned not to bring up race with us because sometimes they don't know how to talk with us about it, and we don't know how to bring it up to them. So it's kind of 2 separate lines here. And an example in the book, an older white woman named Debbie and an older black woman named Pamela, they went to class early. They had a night class together, and they were having a conversation. They were talking about politics, and Debbie brought up President Obama's name, but referred to him as Obama. And Pamela asked her and said, "Do you refer to everybody like that? Do you call them by their last name?" And she said, "Yeah, that's how I refer to people." She said, "Would you call President Bush Bush?" And by that time, the conversation kind of got uncomfortable, but the teacher walked in. So during class, the teacher asked if there was an example of kind of like an uncomfortable situation that people have been put in. And Pamela used a story about her daughters. And she's picking up her daughters from a friend's house. And as the daughters were leaving, they said bye to the parents of her friends. And they said bye to the maid. They said bye to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and she referred to the maid using her first name. And her mother said, did you use her last name or her first name? They said, we used her first name. That's what everybody calls her. And she says, well, next time you go there, I want you to go up to her, I want you to ask her last name, and from that point on, you're going to use that as a sign of respect. So the older white woman, Debbie, she thought using last names, using first names is kind of like a social barrier to kind of like connect with people as you kind of convert with them, kind of make the conversation more, more social and more, easy to. But Pamela uses it as a sign of respect. She wanted to teach her kids that using someone's last name is respect. So that's just kind of like an example that you can come from two different sides of somewhere. Like for me, coming into high school as an 8th grader going into freshman year, my freshman year I went to, for 13 years of my life I went to a private Catholic school. My freshman year there was one black kid in the entire school. Before that I went to school with maybe one black person in my entire life. So the entire time, like, I was actually like, in my mind I'm like, are they gonna judge me? How do I talk to these people? Like, do I treat them differently? Because I didn't know any better. I grew up as a white kid, but I learned growing up and through high school, like I started talking to them more. I started being myself, and all of them think of me, I'm just a goofy white kid to them. So like, it's easy, and sometimes you gotta open up and you gotta step out of your comfort zone. And you meet in high school and then going into college, I've met people that I would never thought I would ever meet, and opening my eyes up to that, opening my mind up to that. Like one of my best friends now, he's African American. He plays lacrosse with me. I've never had a more intelligent conversation with anybody in my life than this guy. Like every single time I talk to him, I get smarter. Like he makes people around him smarter. He's one of like 4 kids in our class to have a full ride scholarship to Mount Union. Like you don't see that very often. He's African American. Like he's my best friend. So just meeting people like that and going out into the world, like just not closing your mind off to like the negativity, and just do something that you wouldn't normally do. Step outside your comfort zone, and I trust me, like you'll learn so much more. And we're gonna kind of talk about like all of our majors and how this class has helped us. So
I'm a criminal justice major, so I want to go into law enforcement. I'm actually interviewing right now for some sheriff's offices, so I want to be a deputy sheriff. So, as you guys know, I'm sure you guys have seen the news and heard about it on social media and stuff like that. Police work right now is one of the most, it's very dangerous at this time. It is a thing that is being kind of hated on right now. A lot of people don't really like police officers at this time. Because of, you see the videos, the different shootings, police brutality, things like that. And, a lot of it has to do with race. And, I feel like, I was going to this class, didn't really know what it was about. I was like, all right, it has to do with diversity. But then, after I was, we learned some of this stuff, and we've watched, videos on things and read books on things. And I've kind of realized just how important this class will be to, like, to me in the real world, or, in my job. Because, as a police officer or anyone in law enforcement, you are going to be constantly dealing with people of different races, different diversities. You're going to be dealing with, all different kinds of skin color. And, as Mike said, there's going to be people that, they do things a different way, and, another group of people will, will think a different way. And I think the better I have of well-rounding of, ethnicity, race, the whiteness factor, that I will be able to be better at my job, and I will be I won't be out there, because another big thing is racial profiling.